Hello, class. We have moved on to chapter 7 of John's Gospel, and the lecture will be titled Conflict at the Feast of Tabernacles. So let's look at the first verse. John chapter 7, verse 1. After these things, Jesus was walking in Galilee, for he was unwilling to walk in Judea, because the Jews were seeking to kill him. Now the feast of the Jews, the feast of booths, was near. Therefore his brothers said to him, Leave here and go into Judea, so that your disciples also may see your works, which you are doing. For no one does anything in secret when he himself seeks to be known publicly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. Jesus was well aware of the plot of the Jews to kill him. The brothers of Jesus seemed to support the plot of the Jews, for they attempted to get Jesus into Jerusalem, where he could be brought under the jurisdiction of the religious authorities. The brothers knew Jesus had been offering himself as the king, so they suggested that he ought to go to the Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem. Since Jesus desired to be such a public figure, he must present himself to the public. Thus they challenged Jesus to go to Jerusalem and publicly reveal himself. Verse 5. For not even his brothers were believing in him. So Jesus said to them, My time is not yet here, but your time is always opportune. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify of it, that its deeds are evil. Go up to the feast yourselves. I do not go up to this feast because my time has not yet fully come. Having said these things to them, he stayed in Galilee. Unbelief had permeated the home in which Jesus grew up. Thus, John noted that even his brothers were not believing in him. Not even his brothers were believing in him. Jesus rejected the counsel of his brothers, saying that the time was not right for him to go to the feast, so he sent the brothers on alone. Jesus recognized the nation's hatred for him and explained that it had arisen because he had exposed their sin. The nation of Israel was devoted to the pursuit of Pharisaic righteousness. The people refused to accept Jesus' condemnation of Pharisaism. Verse 10. But when his brothers had gone up to the feast, he himself also went up, not publicly, but as if in secret. So the Jews were seeking him at the feast and were saying, Where is he? There was much grumbling among the crowds concerning him. Some were saying, He is a good man. Others were saying, No, on the contrary, he leads the people astray. Yet no one was speaking openly of him for fear of the Jews. But when it was now the midst of the feast, Jesus went up into the temple and began to teach. The Jews then were astonished, saying, How has this man become learned, having never been educated? Throughout the opening days of the feast, the Jews were looking for Jesus. Midway through the observance, Jesus appeared in the temple and taught the people. He gained a ready audience, and his words confounded those who listened to him teach. His teaching raised a question as to the source of his wisdom. Verse 16. So Jesus answered them and said, My teaching is not mine, but his who sent me. If anyone is willing to do his will, he will know of the teaching, whether it is of God or whether I speak from myself. He who speaks from himself seeks his own glory, but he who is seeking the glory of the one who sent him, he is true, and there is no unrighteousness in him. Did not Moses give you the law? And yet none of you carries out the law. Why do you seek to kill me? The crowd answered, You have a demon. Who seeks to kill you? Jesus answered, My teaching is not mine, but God's who sent me. Jesus revealed that even though they recognized the divine origin of the law, they did not observe it and said, "Why do you seek to kill me?" So he says, "Why do you seek to kill me?" Pointing out they don't keep the law. The evidence of that was that Moses had forbidden murder. For this accusation, Jesus was charged with being demon-possessed. They denied that anyone was trying to kill him. Verse 21. Jesus answered them, "I did one deed, and you all marvel. For this reason, Moses has given you circumcision, not because it was from Moses, but from the fathers. And on the Sabbath you circumcise a man. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath so that the law of Moses will not be broken, are you angry with me because I made an entire man well on the Sabbath? Do you not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment?" Jesus then referred back to the time the Jews accused Jesus of violating the Sabbath tradition by healing a man on the Sabbath day. Jesus reminded them that the law did permit work on the Sabbath, for circumcision involved work and yet was permitted on the Sabbath. If the Jews permitted the work of circumcision, then they should not object if Jesus healed a man on the Sabbath day. Yet that miracle made the Jews determined to put Christ to death. Verse 25. So some of the people of Jerusalem were saying, "Is this not the man whom they are seeking to kill? Look, he is speaking publicly, and they are saying nothing to him." The rulers do not really know that this is the Christ, do they? However, we know where this man is from, but whenever the Christ may come, no one knows where he is from. The Jewish leaders were thinking they could arrest Jesus as he attended the Feast of Tabernacles. The multitude was now perplexed because Jesus had publicly presented himself, yet no move had been made against him. That led many to wonder if the authorities really had concluded that Jesus is the Christ. The multitude was reluctant to accept that possibility because they believed they could trace Jesus' residence to Nazareth and his parentage to Joseph. Such did not seem to fulfill the Old Testament requirement for the Messiah's residence or his lineage. Verse 28. Then Jesus cried out in the temple, teaching and saying, "You both know me and know where I'm from, and I have not come of myself, but he who sent me is true, whom you do not know. I know him because I am from him, and he sent me." So they were seeking to seize him, and no man laid hand on him, excuse my sneeze, because his hour had not yet come. But many of the crowd believed in him, and they were saying, "When the Christ comes, he will not perform more signs than those which this man has, will he?" Jesus points out to them that they were evaluating him after the flesh. It was true that he had grown up in Nazareth and was a Galilean, but he had not received his authority from Joseph, but from the Father who sent him. While they know Joseph, they do not know the Father in heaven. Thus Jesus affirmed that he came from heaven. He denied that Joseph was his father and claimed that God was his father. They made an attempt at that point to seize Jesus, but were not successful. Verse 32. The Pharisees heard the crowd muttering these things about him, and the chief priests and the Pharisees sent officers to seize him. Therefore Jesus said, "For a little while longer I am with you, then I go to him who sent me. You will seek me and will not find me, and where I am you cannot come." The Jews then said to one another, "Where does this man intend to go that we will not find him? He is not intending to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks, is he?" Jesus was rejected by the multitude. However, many in the crowd put their faith in him. The miracles had confirmed their faith in his word. John reveals a third response. When the Pharisees realized some were putting their faith in Jesus, they appealed to the chief priests, and together they dispatched temple guards to arrest Jesus. At this, Jesus made another profound claim. You will seek me and will not find me, and where I am you cannot come. Those who had rejected Jesus would not be able to accompany him when he returned home. Verse 36. What is this statement that he said, you will seek me and you will not find me, and where I am you cannot come? Now on the last day, the great day of the feast, Jesus stood and cried out, saying, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scripture said, from his innermost being will flow rivers of living water. But this he spoke of the Spirit, of whom those who believed in him were to receive, for the Spirit was not yet given, because Jesus was not yet glorified. Jesus spent the last half of the Feast of Tabernacles teaching the multitudes. He proclaimed the truth of God to them. He claimed to be from God, and he had God's message for them. Great conflict had been generated by his words. He climaxed his teaching on this occasion with an invitation. If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. They had to be willing to accept his word and receive him as the Son of God in order to have their spiritual thirst satisfied. Verse 40. Some of the people, therefore, when they heard these words, were saying, this certainly is the prophet. Others were saying, this is the Christ. Still others were saying, surely the Christ is not going to come from Galilee, is he? Has not the scripture said that the Christ comes from the descendants of David and from Bethlehem, the village where David was? So a division occurred in the crowd because of him. Some of them wanted to seize him, but no one laid hands on him. The gracious invitation of Jesus brought forth a divided response. Some said that Jesus was the prophet, others said more directly that he is the Christ. On the other hand, there were those who rejected this interpretation, reasoning that Christ came from Galilee, whereas the prophets had predicted he would come from Bethlehem, from the lineage of David. Verse 45. The officers then came to the chief priests and Pharisees, and they said to them, why did you not bring him? The officers answered, never has a man spoken the way this man speaks. The Pharisees then answered them, you have not also been led astray, have you? No one of the rulers or Pharisees has believed in him, has he? But this crowd does not know the law is accursed. Some of the crowd sought to seize Jesus and deliver him to the authorities. The temple guards returned to the authorities without Jesus. When asked why they had failed, they answered, never has a man spoken the way this man speaks. The authorities accused these men of falling for Jesus' deception. The Pharisees were the intelligentsia of the community, and they had not put their trust in Jesus. Their view was that Jesus had deceived the ignorant. The source for this lecture came from the book, The Words and Works of Jesus Christ, which is authored by J. Dwight Pentecost.